All right, hello and welcome. If this is your first time, thanks for coming. If you've been here before, welcome back. Today we have a really cool episode where we're gonna learn about building tables in respects to creating brand new applications and what it means to extend a table, and namely the task table. We get a lot of good questions about this, so I'm gonna share what I know about it. We're also gonna hear from a coworker, Dale Stubblefield, who's gonna share his insights on this as well. So if you allow me a quick moment to just explain a couple of things, then we're gonna jump into Instance and actually take a look. I wanna quickly explain what tables are in ServiceNow. So if you notice here, it's reading that a table is a collection of records in the database. Each record corresponds with a row in a table. Each field on the record corresponds to a column on that table. So a nice, good technical definition there. The way I like to see it is that when you're making an application on ServiceNow, one of the core structures of that app is your data model. And that data model is pretty much your tables that hold the data of your app. So when creating apps, one of your steps is to build this data model, essentially these tables. So there are several ways to get tables created. For instance, you can upload a spreadsheet, extend an existing table, or build it from scratch. They all have their benefits. Another way to create tables is through a couple of different interfaces. Our classic interface, our App Engine Studio interface, and the standard Studio interface. So with that briefly explained, let's talk about extending now. So extending a table is a process that will allow you to make a brand new table by copying an existing table, thus inheriting the attributes of that table. So I know that's a few things to process there, but you're essentially taking a copy of an existing table, thus inheriting the attributes or the fields and script logic of that table for your new table. So as an example, in the platform, we wanted to create a table that holds contact information, like a name, an email address, phone numbers. So instead of creating a table from scratch, we have a table called a user table that already has those fields in it. So we took a copy of that by extending it and we called it contact. So now we have a way to add contacts into the database while leaving the existing user table completely intact. So very efficient. So now that we've covered that, let's talk a little bit about the task table itself. So the task table is one of our core tables that's provided with the system. And it is a very, very powerful table because it's really what I've heard called the atomic unit of work in the platform. One of the things that I like to highlight about the task table is that it is used for work type of data. So work type meaning you're assigning something to somebody, they have to do some activities and they have to fulfill it, and then it needs to be closed or completed, something like that. It's actually like a work issuing. That's why it's called a task table. And if you notice here, if I click into standard fields, there's just some fields that are very common to the task table, and you'll start to see why it's tied to work type of activities. So is it active? You can put some notes and comments. It's got approvals. You can assign it to people. It has a description of what it's about. So prioritization. So very, very useful set of fields that if you needed to extend it, then you get all those fields with it, which is super helpful for you. And if you look at some of the other out-of-the-box applications on ServiceNow, like incident management, change management, problem management, they're all extending tasks, and they all have these same fields, all super useful for work type activities just like that. So that's one of the reasons why it's a useful way to get your app off the ground. If you're gonna have a work type activity, extending tasks, that's one of the benefits of that. With that, what we're gonna do is take a few moments to actually extend the task table, build in a new application, and see it in action. And then we're gonna talk about a few things here at the end before we hand it off to Dale. So let me start off by going to the studio so I can use my guided app creator to get an application started here. I'm gonna make a very basic application called a maintenance app. If you haven't used the guided app creator, it's super helpful, very wizardry. It gets you through it super fast. I'm gonna go through it pretty quick right now. But what's even cooler is in Quebec release, we have an App Engine Studio, which just takes this experience to the next level. Totally need to plug that. But for now, let's use this interface. So I'm gonna make a maintenance application here. I'm gonna keep it very simple. I'm just gonna show you a quick way to get an app off the ground, but really focusing on what I said, that data model, building those tables. I'm just gonna pick the classic interface for this particular example. And once we're here now, we're talking about, well, which data tables do you wanna use? Do you wanna use existing ones in the system? That helps a lot. We're gonna do create new. Here's where you see, as I mentioned earlier, you can upload that spreadsheet, you can build it from scratch, and then you can extend. Use an existing table on ServiceNow. And I mentioned using the task table. Okay, so now that I know I'm gonna build an app called a maintenance request, you know, in this quick scenario, that means I wanna issue things out to people. I have a maintenance request that's going to the maintenance worker who's gonna complete the work and close it. So it makes sense to use a task table to leverage that and assign that work out. So if you notice here, we have a chance to make brand new fields, but in this list, this is actually the list of the fields that are coming with my brand new table. So I love the fact that I can scroll through this and see the different fields that are coming with it. There's the work notes, and even beyond that short list that I showed you earlier, you notice that there's plenty more fields in here. So tons of value that you can take advantage of here. So I'm just gonna click on continue, wrap up some configurations here. I wanna auto number that, call it maintenance. Let's give my table structure all together. So, all right, now we're just gonna be done here. Now if you notice 68 fields. I didn't add any custom fields yet, but there's already 68. So that's one of the things that we wanna make note of, because when we start talking about the value of extending task and we talk about things to look out for, this is something we're gonna come back to. So there it is. There's my table. I'm just gonna build my UI really quick. Taking the defaults so we can, you know, hop to it. So now that we're set there, I'm actually gonna come back to my classic interface where I should now see this maintenance app in place. And I'm gonna type in maintenance. And now I see this over here. So there's no, it should be no open records. It's empty. But if I click on new, now I have my, this is the table I just created. Here's the form, and look at all the fields that I already have that I can start using this thing right away if I needed to. You know, say broken, you know, water pipe or something like that. And if I needed to assign this to somebody in the system here, can absolutely do that. So you can take advantage of this super fast. You can get these in people's hands. If I uploaded a spreadsheet, you'd see the data there already. So very useful. So that's one of the opportunities of extending task. Now I can start adding more attributes to it. If I needed to collect other kinds of information, I need a brand new field, I could totally do that. But I have my core structure in place. So I thought I'd show you how to build a quick app extending task, and you see the value there. I thought that was pretty cool. And I think another big plus to extending task that I really appreciate is these reference fields. So you notice I populated that assigned to with somebody inside the system. And if I do the lookup here, I actually see everybody that's in the system that's, you know, got the right role according to the way this filter is. But there's plenty of people in there and you can search for them. That reference came with the task table. So I don't have to build net new references, or I don't have to build them from scratch. Being able to apply a parent record is also super useful. That's those references. And there's just a lot of different reference fields that already exist here that are, you know, going across the system, and you're leveraging those in your brand new application. That's one of my favorite things about extending task. Again, I talked about some of the automation in terms of right now it's active, but if I mentioned that, if I closed it and hit save, we see that now it's unchecked. That's some of that automation that's already built into it. So it's really, really neat. So let's just highlight a couple of the things that you might want to look out for when extending tasks. One thing is going to be that you're not going to want to delete unwanted fields. So if I go back over here and I go to the maintenance table, right, and I look at all my fields, if I didn't need a field, and I know it came with a lot of them, if I didn't need a field, leave it alone and just ignore it. Don't delete them, because there's, because there is a relationship, upstream, then you could run into some trouble if you delete those. So you're just gonna want to ignore those. And then the task is really meant for task-oriented work. So if you need to hold data, don't use the task table. If it's just for data, there's other tables that you could either extend, or you can make a brand new table, but kind of reserve this extension for task-oriented record keeping. So if you're gonna put somebody to work, use the task table. If it's just for data, I wouldn't. There's ways that you can rename some of these columns, but that's also a little bit tricky. Not difficult, it's just some extra steps, because there's what's called dictionary overrides. And so if you wanted to relabel some of these things, you'd have to make sure you applied a dictionary override as for it not to affect everybody. So just little things like that. Those are really, they're not even major gotchas. They're just things to consider when you are extending tasks. Now with that, I want to bring in my coworker and buddy Dale Stubblefield to come in and share some of his insights on extending tasks. Dale?
Thanks, Omar. I personally have used the task table dozens, if not hundreds of times to build quick applications to improve productivity. We've spent about 17 years perfecting the task table, so we've already added all the columns that I need generally all of the time. When I extend it to a child table, I'm able to easily add my own number so that it doesn't collide with the task number. And this is the same architecture that's been successful for our entire ITSM suite of applications, as well as ITOM and other ones on our platform. So this is the same basic way we're using incident, problem, and change. Those are extensions of the task table. If I want to look at problem records, I look at problem. But let's say I wanted to report on all 3 or more applications in one place, I have a common way to do that. If I wanted SLAs on a new application, I'll just extend from task. Everything I need is already there for that, and even to add approvals as well. So the next time you think about building an application, I would start by extending task. It's going to allow you to accelerate your development and get value a lot quicker. Thanks, Omar.
All right, thanks, Dale. Super insightful. Thank you so much for sharing that. And so with that, I just want to thank y'all for your time. I hope you got a little bit out of this, and this is going to be useful information on your journey to building apps on ServiceNow. Thanks.